the latest entry in the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the sequel to 2019's Captain Marvel, The Marvels. I just did a video a couple days ago about Captain Marvel, so if you want my full thoughts on that movie, go watch that video. But to sum it up quick, the movie is not nearly as bad as people say, because I see people say it's one of the worst Marvel movies ever made, it's one of the worst superhero movies ever made. It's definitely on the lower totem pole of the MCU as a whole, but that is actually still pretty high praise considering how good most of the MCU's films have been. So saying it's on the lower end of the spectrum isn't quite the death sentence it would be for other franchises like the DC Extended Universe. So now we have this sequel that did not have much hype around it, and it really showed in the marketing. Unlike stuff like Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania or Guardians of the Galaxy 3, the marketing was pretty lackluster for this movie, but to be fair, marketing in recent years has kind of become a clown show, where trailers will only drop a couple of months before the movie releases. Thought I saw something back there. The first trailer will release a few months before the movie, when we used to get the first teaser, or hell, even an official trailer, many months in advance to build hype for the movie's release. But we don't do that anymore because the filmmaking industry, like I said, is a clown show. But now we get this one that did not exactly have the best trailers, and the characters involved are not exactly the most liked characters in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Captain Marvel is one of the most divisive movies and characters in the franchise, and the actress playing her is, well, pretty much the same thing. Kamala Khan is not exactly a very likable character in any iteration, and her own show had some of the lowest ratings that Disney Plus has seen. And no one cares about Monica Rambeau, straight up. Even as good as WandaVision is, I didn't give a shit about Monica Rambeau. So now we have this movie, and I did a video a while back, or not a while back, like a week or so ago, wondering how bad this was going to be, because critics were pretty split on it, and usually when they're on the lower end, which it was in the rotten range when I made that video, usually that means the movie's good, so I started thinking, you know what, maybe this won't be as bad as it looks. So, how is the movie? Well, I'll tell you exactly what I thought of The Marvels. It was okay. It's fine. There's nothing abhorrent about it. Well, there is one thing, but we'll get to that. But there's nothing spectacular in it either. So, I'll start with some of the good stuff, because there are good things in this movie. For one, the special effects look pretty good, which, again, is Marvel has consistently made good CGI, but people seem to forget this because they like to point out one shot in one of the movies that doesn't look that good, and they use that to say Marvel's getting lazy with their CGI. They'll point out that one green screen in Multiverse of Madness, or they'll point out MODOK, even though the effect was fine, even if the design didn't quite look right, even though it was probably as good as it was going to get. Or they point to the final battle in Black Panther, which just looked awful, but again, those are very sparse examples. I don't think I said the right word there, but you know what I mean. They use, tiny examples to say Marvel has bad CGI when they have some of the best effects in the game. And this movie follows that up. Apparently this movie had a fucking colossal budget, and its box office numbers probably won't make that back, but at least the money is showing on the screen, unlike The Flash, which had a $300 million budget and looked like a movie made for about $60 million. Or hell, I've seen movies with $60 million budgets that look better than that movie. But nevertheless, the CGI does look very good. The action sequences they're nothing spectacular, but they're serviceable enough for the film, and I did kind of have fun with a lot of them. I did kind of like the teleporting aspect, even if the consistency of it doesn't really match, and I'll get back to that in a second. Nick Fury's still a fun character. Goose is still awesome. The Flerken is still the best character in this duology. And the villain. Ooh, okay. The villain is kind of on both ends of the spectrum, where she starts out okay, but then just like that, and right as she's defeated, might I add, I'll get into that in the spoiler territory, which I'm going to get into in a second, which is where most of the cons come in. Cons. But it's like, in a split second, she turned from okay and sympathetic to just a power-hungry asshole. So, yeah, let's get into the other side of the spectrum. And the worst thing in the Marvels is the Marvels. They're all bad. The characters, the acting, the dialogue, the writing, it's all bad. Brie Larson is still boring as hell as Captain Marvel. Teyonah Parris apparently didn't show up for this movie because she's giving a half-assed performance, and Kamala Khan's annoying as hell. And this isn't just in this movie. I've never found Kamala Khan tolerable, except for one instance, and that was the Avengers video game, ironically, even though that adaptation wasn't that great. That is the only time I have not found this character so repulsively annoying, and it's really bad here. And again, I don't know if I have to blame the actress, the writers, or the director in this scenario, because again, I didn't watch Ms. Marvel. I've been meaning to get around to that for a year and a half now, and I still haven't gotten around to it. But bottom line is that Kamala Khan is the worst thing in this movie. She's one of the worst mainstream comic book, or at least Marvel heroes, and people know it. And they keep trying to bring her back, only to kill her off and then bring her back because they can tell nobody wants her around. And the same thing happens with this franchise. And the ending scene, you know what? Yeah, you know what? Fuck it. Let's just go to spoilers here. The ending scene with her and Kate Bishop is one of the cringiest setups I've ever seen. They tried to mimic the Nick Fury with Iron Man scene, and I know it's supposed to be pretty tongue-in-cheek, it's supposed to be funny, it wasn't funny, it was one of the cringiest things I've seen in this entire franchise. The humor overall is kind of hit and miss. There were parts I did legitimately laugh at, even if some jokes did take me a second to understand, like the scene where the Flerkens are having to swallow all the crew members so they can all fit in an escape pod. It started playing songs from Cats. It started playing Daylight and then followed with Memory. And I was wondering, why are they playing Daylight from Cats? Cats. It took me a while, but I eventually figured out the joke, and it was pretty funny. I will give them that. It was similar to what I praised in... Ironically, I never thought I'd bring this movie up again, but with SpongeBob Sponge on the Run, where a musical choice was one of the best jokes in the movie. So, there's that. And then with the teleporting thing, I said I'd get back to this. The idea isn't that bad, and they do utilize it pretty well during the action sequences. It's interesting how they do it. However, they say it's done anytime they use their powers, but this is not the case in the movie, because it takes them like 4 or 5 times using their powers in order for one of them to swap. They do mention later on that they want to keep it at a minimum, which means using your powers as little as possible. But the simple fact, I'm pretty sure there was a line of dialogue earlier in the movie that said, line for line, that we teleport anytime we use our powers. But again, it takes them like 4 or 5 times of using their powers for one of them to switch places. So I don't understand how this is supposed to work, and then it just stops happening. I don't understand that. And then I said I'd get back to the villain, so might as well. The villain in this movie wants to kill Captain Marvel because she essentially her world is basically on the brink of being destroyed because she destroyed some kind of AI thing that basically powered their city and everything because it was dangerous, but she destroyed it because it was dangerous, and essentially destroyed their son. It doesn't make a ton of sense, and it's breezed over in a quick conversation. But at least it's a decent motivation. She wants revenge on Captain Marvel for essentially destroying her planet. She's basically the reason her planet and her people, her friends, her followers, and everything are going to die is because of her doing. And at the end of the movie, they come up with a solution where Carol can basically create a new sun out of her energy. Again, don't ask, doesn't make sense, and it's never really explained. But, and it's like the villain's like stabbed with like something. I think it was just like a broken piece of the ship or something. I don't remember exactly what. But, and they make this solution, and then they come up with that solution, and then they pull the thing off the villain, and then she immediately attacks them. Why? You have the solution in the palm of your hand, and you're deciding to say, fuck that, I want the other band, I want the power. This is never explained, might I add, because the power overwhelms her, and she basically gets Thanos snapped by it. She turns to dust, like, 5 seconds later. Can someone please explain this? Because, again, it's a character that just changes at the drop of a hat, and there wasn't even any build-up to it. There wasn't a reason why she all of a sudden just wanted more power to do it herself when they already came up with a solution that could work. And even if it doesn't work, you might as well let her try first. Like, maybe if she tried and failed and then you attacked, that would have made more sense. But that's not what happened. And, side note, Kamala Khan's family is in this way too much, and they are very obnoxious, just like she is, so I guess it matches. But then something I want to talk about is the end credit scene. Now, there were a lot of rumors going around that Beast was supposed to show up, played by Kelsey Grammer. And then a bunch of sites that are the big anti-Marvel ones started talking about how, oh, this is just a desperate bid to get people to come back. He's not really in the movie. Guess what? He's in the movie. And it's Kelsey Grammer, and it's fucking awesome. He doesn't look right because he looks weird because, and I couldn't figure out why at first, but then I realized it's because it wasn't makeup prosthetics, it was CGI. He looks twice as big as he was in X-Men Last Stand, and again, it's because they use CGI and not practical effects, which it's fine, but it just felt like it was worth bringing up because he looked weird. And he mentions the name Charles, which is obviously Charles Xavier. And I should mention why they show up is because essentially when the villain got both the bands, she ended up breaking a hole between the two universes. Contrary to a lot of the TV spots, that's not the main plot of the movie. It happens in the last 10 minutes. And she has to fly to the other side to close the portal after absorbing some power from Carol and Kamala. Why she has to go to the other side to do this, I'm not exactly sure, because again, it's never explained. And what happens is that she also sees her mother, who obviously doesn't recognize her because she's in a different universe, and and this was a character that it was like a brief glimpse of her in a lot of TV spots that people started speculating was Storm. No, it turns out she's binary. And I don't mean the woke gender ideology binary way. I mean that she is the character of the superhero Binary, which was Carol Danvers' superhero name when she joined the X-Men in the comics. Why is this Maria Rambeau? I don't know. There was really no point. You could have made this Carol here, and basically you have the same scene. It doesn't change anything, so I don't know why they made this change. So it does really sound like I'm crapping on this movie, because a lot of the details about this movie don't make a ton of sense and aren't really explained, but the bigger portions of the movie, like the action sequences, the special effects, something I forgot to mention, there's an entire 20-minute sequence of this that turns into a musical, because they're on a planet where essentially their language is music, which could be a cool idea if it didn't turn into a fucking musical out of nowhere. And it was pretty cringy. It was like the wedding scene in Sonic the Hedgehog 2. It's like, this is out of nowhere, and why is this here? You could cut this and miss nothing, and it would be a lot better. And I will say it's pretty short, so at least you're not going to be sitting with this thing for 2.5 hours. It's about an hour 45 with the credit scenes. And again, it's not a terrible movie. I'd honestly say the first movie was better though, because again, it had a more focused story. Neither of these really give Carol a character arc, so they're kind of dead even on that. And the first movie didn't have Kamala Khan, so that one automatically gets a win for that. So, yeah, that's all I got for the Marvels. I'm gonna give this a C-. I can't go any higher, because there's just so many issues, but it's not a god-awful movie. So, that's all I got. Let me know what you guys thought of the Marvels, and I will see y'all next time. Bye.